Hello and welcome back to Let's Chill, the official, unofficial Minnesota Wind Chill, Minnesota Strike podcast. I'm Jeff,
I'm Jay.
And I'm Kane.
and we are recapping the excellent revenge game between the Colorado Summit and Minnesota Wind Chill, where the Wind Chill took down the Summit 20-17, and it wasn't just on legs, I should say, just on fatigue. But we can get on into how the Wind Chill won soon. It was a fun game to be at. It was so fun to see the Summit in person, and it was really satisfying to win that game after they got destroyed by the Summit last year. Before we get too deep into it, as usual, we're going to do some stall count trivia. I'm leading the stall count this week. Again, like that, the share button is nice and big and green, but I can never find it because I'm looking for like a different one. All right, stall count trivia. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. How many 2023 playoff teams are currently not eligible for playoffs as of today? If the playoffs started today, how many teams who made the playoffs last year wouldn't be in it?
Oh my gosh.
I'm
gonna
say sorry.
two.
I'll read the answers. 6,
Oh, yeah.
3, 2, or 4.
I'm gonna say two. I feel like a lot of teams are still in contention.
I think what Jeff means is how many 2023 teams, if the playoffs started today, like
That's
if
what,
the cutoff
yeah.
was today.
That's what I said. Not that they're not eligible, but they're not mathematically
Gotcha.
out. Just if they started today, they're not in the top 3 in their division.
Yeah, I'm still gonna say C.
I'm pretty sure it's 4.
The answer is 4. I don't have the teams right in front of me, but I believe they are the Summit. I'll go ahead, Jay. The Aviators,
Mm-hmm.
the Alley Cats, and the Union.
Yeah, because the South and the East they might not. I think they're actually in the same standings they were last year, although a couple might be switched around in the South. And actually, I know the East is completely messed up.
Yeah.
They're not the same as they were last year, but standings wise, but they're the same exact 6 teams.
Yeah. The Central and West Division, they're like mixed up, and we're gonna get into that. But it's really, I love seeing that. I'll be honest, because it just makes for an interesting storyline. All right, which was the highest scoring quarter on Saturday for both teams? Both teams had one particular quarter, Summit and Winchell, where they scored not a ton, but much more than the others. Was it the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, or the fourth quarter?
Oh geez. You know what? First quarter for some reason sounds right.
Oh, I want to say it was the second.
It was the third quarter. And it was actually the only quarter that the Summit beat the Winchell. They scored 7, the Winchell scored 6. It was just a high scoring third quarter right out of halftime. All right, this last question is kind of a fun one, and it is technically a trick question. What Winchell player milestone did we witness on Saturday night? One player had a particular stat that stood out on Saturday night. Was it A, Colin Berry's 50th career game? B, Brandon Mattis's for 100th career goal? C, Thomas Chope's first Callahan? Or Josh Klane's 10,000th yard thrown?
Jeez. Brandon Mattis's 100th career goal.
It was Mattis's 100th career goal.
Yes.
But it also could have been Colin Berry's 50th career game. I feel like that's like a sneaky.
So all of them are in a way very close to being true. Colin Berry has played 55 games, I believe. Thomas Schopp scored his first goal. And Josh Klane statistically threw his 10,000th yard thrown on Saturday, but the UFA didn't start measuring yards thrown until like 2015, 16, whatever, a couple years. So based on Josh Klane's stat sheet, he's at like 10,035. So we did witness his 10,000th recorded yard thrown, but obviously he's thrown much more than that. And, the 3 or 4 seasons before that record existed. So fun fact. But yeah, shout out to Brandon Mattis and his 100th career goal. That's a huge stat, and not many people like, have been around as long as Brandon Mattis, and to reach that milestone is super cool. So congratulations, Mattis. Love to have you on
especially as
the
a
pod.
defensive player.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's a number that like I think anyone would be proud of.
Also, I want to shock you a little bit more than that on the Josh Klein thing.
Yeah.
He's at 10,051 yards thrown. They started tracking that stat in 2021, which means that Josh Klein has 6 seasons. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. No, yeah, 6 seasons, 5 or 6. I can't count. Where his stats weren't tracked. So more than half his career of throwing yards is not tracked.
So he has, extrapolating, at least 20,000 throwing yards. At least.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, some of those seasons he played like 5 or 6 games. So
right.
maybe not quite, but still.
No. That's crazy. But all of those answers could have been kind of correct, sort of. Except, Colin Berry's was the least likely. But okay, let's get into the game. Again, just a quick general recap. Colorado Summit were on a doubleheader weekend, and I'm gonna say it. The UFA kind of did them dirty with back-to-back doubleheader weekends. Like, obviously, you can't predict oh wow, the Summit team is really gonna be struggling this year, so let's throw them some really tough schedules. Like, you don't know ahead of time. But even if this were the Empire, no, that's dirty. Throwing and then going on the road, going to out of division games, playing Radicals and the wind chill. But they did, so they traveled to Madison on Friday night, lost a pretty close game. Like, they definitely could have won. Jay was saying just before the podcast, the Summit have come from behind in almost all of their games, and in very few of them have they won. They make good late game pushes to come back, but they can't quite secure the dubs. And that happened again then on Friday night against Madison, and then when they traveled to Minnesota in really rainy conditions, it downpoured at some points of the game. It wasn't super windy, but it was seafoam windy. And yeah, Winchell came out pretty strong against them, and the Summit did make a comeback. That third quarter, they outscored the Winchell 7-6. Ended up being a 2017 win with in the Winchell's favor. That was a really nice, really big win for the Winchell.
Yeah, it was. Outside of the comeback win or like the revenge win from last season, taking that out of the equation, just looking at this season, it was one of those games that we've been kind of anticipating, knowing that the outcome of this game could very well have been, not to be dramatic, but the outcome of the Central Division, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think coming away with the win this weekend puts us in a really, really good place. So we'll get more into that as well.
Yeah, definitely don't want to talk about playoffs yet, but yes, you're totally right. And even momentum shifting,
right.
And just that, the home win, they didn't get a home win yet this season, and then I think the way they won too was really big. They went against this used to be juggernaut team. Again, I think the Summit still are a good team. I will go to bat for them on that side, but this year they're not they're not playing like a good team. But still, I think to beat a team named the Summit in this league is you carry some clout. I think you carry some weight behind your back now. So it's nice that the Winchell were able to do that.
Yeah, not only that, but also I think what Josh Klein was saying in that in the 7 on the line, I believe it was this week, where it was, Madison also beat them. So if Minnesota were to have lost to them, especially on a day where they're tired, relatively speaking, the Summit did beat the shred last week, or 2 weekends ago now, after being tired, but still, the fact that Madison was able to get a win basically put the onus on Minnesota. Minnesota had to get the win, and they did. So not only is it a nice moral victory or a nice hey, yeah, we beat the Summit, but it was also it was sort of a must-win situation for them because of the way the Radicals won as well.
Yeah, it's almost like the Radicals, and this is not the way professional athletes think, but this is the way that I think as a non-professional athlete. The Radicals game almost gives them a buffer of like, oh, if the Radicals lost, okay, cool. If someone's coming off a big win, they're on the road, they're feeling good about themselves. Now they're putting together a winning streak. So if the wind chill lost, like, oh, okay, well, we'll give it to them. They're hot now. It's kind of like their excuse to lose against the Radicals. But since the Radicals, and then if they won, it'd be like, okay, cool, like we won. But since the Radicals won, you don't really have an excuse to lose in a weird way, like, yeah, but yeah, like I don't think the wind chill were even thinking that. Like Josh Klein, I think articulated it kind of like that, but not to say that they were looking for that excuse. But I think it was the way that the wind chill played. Really, I think there was some fatigue. Obviously, like it's impossible not to be fatigued if you're the Summit coming out. This is your 4th game in 2 weeks. That's a crazy schedule, but like I don't think the wind chill just won on legs alone and on endurance alone. Because again, look at the push at the end of the game, and they kept a pretty close game the whole time. It was never like, oh yeah, wind chill have it in the bag. Like there were a couple like 4-goal leads maybe, but it never really felt like the wind chill secured it basically until the buzzer went off. Because yeah, I think it was just a good blow for blow game.
Absolutely. I want to say right now, like on pod, I know Jay and I had talked about this a little bit at the game, but the Summit also had like really good sportsmanship. There were a number of integrity calls that the Summit had made that, honestly, you don't see a lot of integrity calls. I'm like, that's not like really a secret. So on top of the shout out to like their playing ability, just like really good match on both sides. Like you were saying, blow for blow. I think what's really interesting about how Minnesota responded to the Summit is that the Summit just kept like throwing themselves at us. Like they really were just like, we're not gonna let you think that we're tired, right? Every single point they were pushing it. And so it forced Minnesota to be on their A game the whole time. And it didn't really leave a lot of room for error.
Yeah. I mean, looking at I had the stats up. Let me find them really fast. But I had tweeted this too. How I think really the wind chill won. Maybe this is exaggerating a little bit, and I will balloon this statement a little bit. But I think they won almost on one stat alone, and that's break points. The stats, wow, losing my words here, are pretty closely identical. They're comparable. Completion percentage was 94, 91. Summit had 94%. The huck percentage was 75 to 72. Like that's comparable. Hold percentage, wind chill had 78, Summit had 71. Like their offense was doing fairly well, both sides. Red zone conversion, the Summit had 76, wind chill had 69. Nice. But break percentage, and this is the interesting stat, the Colorado Summit had 2 breaks against the wind chill, which is like insane. That's so low. And the wind chill had 6. And that's not like significantly more, but that's, I mean, 4 goals. That's a 4-goal lead, and it ended up being a 3-point game. Like the Summit's defense could not figure it out. Their offense clearly was clicking. And the crazy thing is, like Alex Atkins, and we're gonna say his name a lot on the pod tonight, I bet. Love him or hate him, this guy's good. He played. How many points did he play on Saturday night?
He played 26 or 27 points.
He played 26 points, and the night before he played 33. So he played 59 points that weekend. And almost all of them were on offense against Minnesota. So when he was on the field on offense, clearly their offense was working. And their defense was struggling evidently against, well, I guess it was their break point, so that it was their offense. Or no, it was their defense playing offense. What am I saying? Yeah, like their defense was not capitalizing when they needed to.
I also want to say though, their offense was getting ran.
Yes.
Yeah, they had a good red zone conversion. They had a good hold percentage. But I mean, realistically, they had almost 150 more passes. And no, they had exactly 150 more passes than Minnesota.
Like almost double the amount.
Yeah. Yeah.
And go ahead.
That tires out players. So even if the Summit weren't tired from the night before, like part of the reason they were tired was because Minnesota was running them. Like Minnesota was throwing a lot of zones, a lot of zone looks at certain times that forced handlers to move the disc back and forth and be patient. Minnesota's defense was putting on a lot of pressure. And like Brandon Mattis said in the pod we did with him, sometimes it doesn't matter if you necessarily get the break. It just matters that you kept their offense out there. And for a team that was already probably tired, like that level of throwing, like that number of completions, despite having a higher completion percentage, that just means they dropped more passes.
So that's a great point. The wind chill, we talked about this, especially with the first Pittsburgh game, how they also had a very similar stat of basically double the amount of throws that the wind chill threw. Looking at just quick season stats this year, the wind chill's opponents throw, this is a total completions of 1,911 completions, which is 1, 2, 3. Wait, no, I don't have it sorted by that, but it's among the top. It's top 10. So their opponents throw a ton of scores, like the 10th most against an opponent. Their opponent's hold percentage, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, is 6th. So what I'm saying is their defense forces offenses to throw a lot of throws, a lot of completions. And that forces a lot of turnovers. They do a great job at not letting offensive be successful either. It kind of combines, if that makes sense. Winchell's opponents are throwing more, and they're throwing less accurately, which makes sense with the amount of break points we get. Like we've been saying it basically since 2013, like how good this defense is. And yeah, like it showed on Wednesday too, or Saturday. What the frick? Like against an out of division opponent too. It's not just like, oh yeah, the Central Division throws a bunch of completions. Like I think it's the Winchell, forcing them to make those passes and make mistakes.
I think, yeah, I mean, we could go clip how many times we've talked about the efficiency and the how effective Minnesota's defense has been for the team, like historically. And yeah, you got to give a lot of credit to just field control and then just pace of game control as well. Because you get to the end of the game and Colorado has a 3-point gap to make up. All you're doing if you're Minnesota is controlling the clock at that point, right? And so it's good on Minnesota's defense to be able to adapt to the different situations throughout the game. It's not a one-trick pony. Each line that goes out there feels like it's designed to be able to execute on specific defensive plays. And so I think taking control on the defense kind of just disrupts a lot of the flow for the other team.
Yeah. And then on the other side of that, this week specifically, the Summit did throw a force middle, if you guys noticed. I did predict that in our podcast that was not actually published. I might have said it on the Instagram reel that I posted. I don't remember if I actually did. But I did talk about force middle, and if they threw a zone, I was curious if Summit were trying to throw a zone. And the Winchell were really smooth on offense working through that. Like they were not affected by that force middle, it seemed, at all. Like you said, Kane, they took that field positioning and they utilized it. They're like, cool, thanks. You forgot that we have Josh Klain and Will Brandt. Like we don't really care where you're forcing us because we can break that. Like they talked about on swing pass today, so I'll give them credit. Like Will Brandt's break throws are why he's so effective because it opens up parts of the field that defenses just aren't covering. They're forcing elsewhere. And then their cutters know that, and the Winchell's cutters get open. And the Winchell were incredibly effective at throwing hucks as well on Saturday. Another notable stat was they not only attempted their most amount of hucks on Saturday, they attempted 18. They completed their most their highest amount of hucks of the season at 13. Again, I think in windy conditions at Seafoam Stadium in the rain against a team who I thought was going to force middle or throw zone, I expected almost no hucks. I expected a really high red zone conversion from the wind chill. Like they needed to do that, and they didn't. They were like, nah, watch this. And they just, Josh Klain just was slinging the disc downfield and like, we don't need to go into the red zone if we can just go into the end zone. Like, and that's what they did.
I also want to point out that the Minnesota's red zone was 69% this last weekend. Oh, very nice. But something that forcing middle is very good against are those red zone plays. When you think about, you have that short field position, you don't have much room to spread out, and now you can't even go like horizontally across the field because you have hard times throwing those break passes. Again, unless you're Will Brandt, but hard time throwing those passes. You have much more people in a much smaller area of the field. So I think that like Minnesota's red zone conversion percentage being a little bit down this weekend makes sense. And something that forcing middle doesn't necessarily do is stop pucks.
Right.
So I think your prediction of, it's going to be bad conditions, so they need to huck less and they're going to need to increase their red zone conversion because they're going to be hucking less made sense, but just not because of that forced middle prediction.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Yeah, the application of that didn't totally work, but yeah, the conditions were definitely there. I'm like, it almost seemed like just from the eye test, like I didn't ask anyone, but it seemed like the weather like almost wasn't a factor at all. It like there weren't a ton of turnovers. There wasn't like really bad mistakes. Like, oh, he would have caught that if he had dry hands. Like, I guess from kind of what I'm remembering, maybe if you guys disagree, but
there were a few throws, I think particularly from Will Brandt, where it looked like the disc just slid out of his hands. I think he had like 4 throwaways or something like that. It was they were bad too. Like there was a couple of pulls that went wide. Not super important.
Yes, yeah.
But there were a few that the weather definitely had an effect, but I don't think it was so much that they were afraid to do anything. Like we said, they converted on their highest percentage of hucks and threw their most attempts as well. So I don't think that it was really affecting how they chose to play.
Right. Yeah. One thing I want to point out, and this will kind of transition to some clips, but I do want to point out the I think it was a fun matchup to watch between PK and Alex Atkins. Unfortunately, I think Alex Atkins got the better of that matchup. As much as like PK is a freaking beast on the field and at defense, like he was just named the offensive player of the year, and he's on the starting Winchell's defense. Alex Atkins, again, I think it speaks to Atkins' skill. I know he can be pretty chirpy on the field, but he was able to burn PK. He was able to be very impactful as a cutter, as a handler. Like he's a captain on that team, and it is clear.
Yeah, I don't think his chirping is really a disrespectful chirp though. I've heard him talk on like a couple podcasts. I think he had like one with like Evan Lepler, where he says like if he's chirping with you, if he's talking to you, it means that this is a game that he cares about. It's a game that he sees as not necessarily worthy of his time, because I don't want to put those words in his mouth. But like I think he likes the competition for sure. And yeah, shout out PK though. If you're listening, come on, pod.
Yeah, I mean, like I think PK was a worthy defender. I think that was a great matchup. I don't blame Feldman for putting it on. I think Atkins just won the matchup. And there was a point, or maybe a couple of points, where Atkins was chirping, especially with PK, and was doing the quack chant, kind of at PK's gray duck career, and flapping his wings, which is like, I don't know, it's fun chirping. I think it is good with your specific matchup. But that's what brings me to my clip. Of course, I got a YouTube ad, so I'm going to play this ad before I share my screen. But there's a nice revenge goal that PK gets at the end of the game. and a very fun team celly that goes along with it. So this is, as we can see, fourth quarter, like end of game. This point, it does matter, but it doesn't really matter. PK was just at the top of the screen here. Will Bryant's got the disc. Now PK, he's going to see Bevon with the disc, and he's in the middle right here. As soon as he sees Bevon with the disc, he just goes for it. It is worth noting Alex Atkins is not on PK. I don't think he's even on the field at this point, in case you were curious. But he's just going to book it to the end zone. Boom, puts on the Jets, and just like leaves his defender in the dust. And watch the celly. He starts flapping his wings. And the rest of the team joins with him. And it's just glorious. That's just glorious. I think especially if you are spending the last, hour and a half, 2 hours getting burned by Alex Atkins, or Alex Atkins is getting the better of you in that matchup. He's chirping at you. He's putting your Grey Duck career kind of in your face. Like, shout out PK, man. Like, he's such a good player, and he's classy, and that's like that had to have felt so good.
I do want to say two things about that play in particular. One, that's part of the reason why he won Offensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. He was making that cut to space, I think, before Bevon actually had the disc. Like, you could see him like leading up to that a little bit. He was already starting to like see the continuation pass. I'm sure he gave some sort of gesture to Bevon or some sort of verbal cue to Bevon, like, "Hey, I'm going. Like, I got this." Also, the reason why Atkins wasn't on him that play, that was an offensive point.
Oh,
that was. I'm almost positive that was an offensive play.
Yes, I think you're
right back out on the D line.
Yeah, I think you're right, because PK didn't play much offense, but yeah, that was one of their, because Bevon was on the field and he usually doesn't play defense. Well, sometimes, I guess.
Not this season as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, we were seeing PK on offense there, and while he is a stellar defender, one of the best on the team, I would love to see more PK on offense. Sort of like how a few seasons ago I said I wanted to see more Bevon on offense versus more defense. So all I'm saying is I was right about Bevon. I think I'm right about PK. Put him on offense.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about PK is like he's so good he can play anywhere, and like he really is like a hybrid player of like he knows what to do. He's got that field awareness. He's so impactful, and yeah. But yeah, it would be fun to see him get some more O points. So you see his stats go up a little bit more. But okay, I have one more clip to share. So I clipped this one at first just because I was like, wow, this is a great play. This is a Thomas Shope goal that like he kind of fumbles it. It's a great huck. I don't know if it's considered a huck if it's not 40 yards, but Thomas Shope fumbles it, recovers it in the end zone for a goal. Later, I found out that this was his first career UFA goal. So we're also going to recognize and shout out that. Congratulations, Thomas Shope, on your first UFA career goal. Wish I knew that at the time. I just didn't even think about it. So right now, Tristan Manamortel has a disc at the bottom right of the screen here, as you'll see.
Thomas Shope, if you're listening, we'd love to get you on the pod sometime.
And then just watch the cutters, watch the disc movement. This is a break chance and a break point for the wind chill. Thomas Shope right here is in the middle of the screen. I think this is kind of his final cut before he goes scores. And if I'm not mistaken, Cam Lacey, who has a disc right now, actually gets the assist, which is, again, nice to see too. So he sees Thomas Shope running deep, and yeah, Cam Lacey he starts low, gets that disc up, gives Shope time to get down, and just like, boom, first career goal. He kind of maxed it to himself. Like, he has two defenders on him. I'm just gonna keep playing this through because I think they replay it in a second. Shope's concentration on the disc through two defenders, doesn't even like really look at where the defenders are. He doesn't care where he is on the field. He does not release his focus from the disc, which is why he comes down with it. Watch this replay. Like, he's not really even paying attention to the defenders. He does not look down at the field where he is. He doesn't care. and just gets up, max it, like that second effort. The disappointment.
The defenders
Colorado.
are just like, what do you even do, right?
Yeah, I mean they did their job. You know,
Yeah.
You know,
And
look how-
I mean,
it's one of those plays, and there were countless of these. You could pretty much go to any single point that was scored. This game really was just a back and forth, excellent play after excellent play. So really, really good game by Colorado.
I also want to say there was a point that Colorado had that was very similar to this, where Mattis smacked the disc into, I don't remember whose hands, but I mean, Mattis was so disappointed in himself.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think it was in the other end zone.
I wish we would have clipped that one too, because that was his reaction when he does that. It's just like when Zadeklik did it against the Surge.
I was gonna,
and then
bring that
like her reaction is priceless. So then that's exactly what I was feeling then. I'm like, oh man, oh man.
Like you do everything you can, like you do exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and just doesn't work out. But yeah, no, it was a great game from both teams. Like Summit played a good game, especially given their schedule and everything else. Like hats off to them. It was fun. It was a fun crowd, even if it was rainy and like smaller crowd than normal. Like it was just a good atmosphere. This Winchell team is legit and they're real and they're good. They're good.
I want to say one thing. We keep saying that it was this back and forth game between Colorado and Minnesota, and it sort of was, but at no point was Minnesota trailing. I think the only time they were tied was when it was 0-0. Right.
I think you're correct there. They were never losing.
I don't think they were ever like tied after a point was scored because they got a break right away.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yes, it was back and forth, but also it
wasn't like blow for blow. Like,
right. Yeah. I think that doesn't mean Minnesota didn't have a lead the whole time. I was more so just recognizing,
right,
giving Colorado some love.
Interdivisional
rivalries. We gotta.
I don't.
Happy Father's Day, Colorado.
We take everything we can get.
Oh my gosh. All right. Let's go a little bit to some league news, and this can we can talk about playoffs a little bit here. In fact, Jay, if you wanna just give the Central Division or even just the Winchell playoff picture, that would be awesome.
All right. Yeah, with this win, Minnesota needs 3 wins, and at least one of those 3 needs to be over Chicago, which is a very weird thing for me to say. Because
just to clarify, to make playoffs.
Yeah, to guarantee
a spot first. Yep,
just to guarantee a spot in playoffs, which is a wild thing for me to say because they would have only needed any 3 wins to guarantee a playoff spot if Chicago had won this weekend. So I was thinking, any 3 wins would be good. But Chicago lost the Thunderbirds. So there is a very real possibility that the Pittsburgh Thunderbirds end up in first place in the division if Minnesota does not get to 9 wins.
Don't say that.
If Minnesota gets 9 wins, they will be ahead of Pittsburgh. But it is a real possibility that the Thunderbirds still have a path to first place. Let's put it like that.
If you told me this first week of the season in our prediction episode, I would have exploded.
If you told me this after Minnesota's first win, where they beat them by 7 points, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah, it's such a weird division this year. Like, again, let's just go through the Central Division standings. Goes Minnesota Winchell 5-1, Madison Radicals at 5-2, Pittsburgh Thunderbirds at 4-3, Chicago Union are in 4th place at 4-3, Indianapolis Alley Cats are at 3-3, and Detroit Mechanics are almost at 100 straight losses. So yeah, like this division is almost literally upside down. Like Radicals and Thunderbirds are on top. Last season they were on the bottom. That's crazy to me. Like, again, maybe I'm not like my mind's spinning around like a cartoon, but like it's usually not like a one season shift like that where it's that dramatic of a shift in the division.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say the Alley Cats, if I'm not mistaken, need to win 5 games of their last 6. They can lose because I think they end their season against the Summit at home. They can lose that game, I'm pretty sure. And otherwise they can't lose a game to make the playoffs.
Interesting.
Because that would give other teams enough wins guaranteed. They might be able to get a 4. They might be able to sneak it in with 7. I'm not positive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. And then, yeah, like other divisions, we're not going to go division by division, but like we said, the West Division is also like mixed up right now. If I have it up here, it's like Salt Lake Shred, Seattle Cascades, and Oakland Spiders are the top 3. Colorado Summit are at 2 and 5 in 5th place. And the LA Aviators, who made playoffs last year, are 1 and 6. Like their season's over. So it's just like it's really interesting to see, and I really enjoy the mix-ups and the chaos of the season. So other league news, as we've already talked about, is the Summit went to 0-2 on the weekend. They've won only 1 of their last 4 games. And I mean, to their most important opponent, the Shred, but they are also hanging on by a thread. Like they are still mathematically eligible for the playoffs, but like in their heart of hearts, they're already probably out of it. If we're talking momentum or if we're talking morale, they can still make it, and it would be cool to see them come back. But the Philadelphia Phoenix also are facing a tough season. They played the New York Empire this weekend, and like they should have won. They should have won by all measures. I think they were winning basically the whole game, if I'm not mistaken. You guys are shaking your head. Like you guys know the game.
Yeah, it was brutal.
I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was one of those games where it's like, if it would have been a movie situation where it's like the underdogs kind of won, they would have charged the field, then it would have been great. But no, New York just did something special, kicked in that 2023 team.
I mean, it was also it was heartbreaking. That third quarter killed me. New York came out of that halftime break and they doubled their score. They went from 8 to 16 in the third quarter.
Whoa.
Like they threw down the gloves. They were like, "Nah, we're gonna win this."
Yeah.
And I after halftime, I was like, "Oh dang, that's pretty good." And then I went to the third quarter, watched the third quarter, and I'm like, "I know how this game ends," and I shut it off.
Yeah.
To be fair, the Phoenix actually really kept the game close. In the fourth quarter, they went blow for blow, 5-5 each. But
I mean, it sounds like you're describing the Summit. Like the Summit also, like they keep up with their opponents, not getting blown out, but they just like can't win. The Phoenix cannot catch a break this season. Again, like I think their bad season's a fluke. They're playing good ultimate. I'm not watching their games, I guess, but like they have a good roster still. They're keeping opponents within just a couple points toward the end of the game. And they just like it's not swinging their way. And I think that shows how competitive the East Division is. And yeah, like it just like it's unfortunate to see. I feel for the Phoenix because they shouldn't be a 1-6 team right now.
I feel like the Phoenix are, and I know we're supposed to be covering the wind chill. I feel like the Phoenix are maybe the least predictable team in the league. I think they are. I mean, it's the joke is the hot birds and the cold birds.
Yep.
Sometimes you call them coin flip. You know, it's 50-50 whether or not you're gonna win or lose.
Yeah.
Because I think like the week prior to the Empire game, they played Boston and they lost like 12-20 or something like that. They lost by like 10 points almost. Like, it was a bad game the week prior. And then they go out against like the Empire and they look like flawless. They look really good. They're going, basically winning for the majority of the game.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, anything can happen. And the East Division in particular. So that brings me to my next one. The DC Breeze were trailing Montreal and scored 4 straight, including a buzzer beater to win it. Like it looked like they were going to drop that game and just take the L. And they found a way to scrape by and come back. Which is like the opposite of that, where like they were able to make that comeback and push and get the win. They're at 7-2 at the top of the East Division. And Boston Glory is right behind them at 6-2. So like the East Division is competitive this year. It's same teams at the top, but in a different order, like all together. So, and then finally, just real quickly, we've already talked about him plenty, but love him or hate him, Alex Atkins is good. Just his weekend stats include over 2 games, he played 59 points. He had 12 assists, 5 goals, and 3 blocks for a plus minus of 16. I can't do this math right off my head, but he had over 1,100 throwing yards and almost 500 receiving yards. Just like putting up crazy numbers. He also had, and maybe those are the biggest numbers, he had 2 L's on the weekend, and that's all. We'll wrap it up there about the Summit. But weekly forecast, going back to the wind chill. Wind chill are coming back to Seafoam Stadium. Jay, you were right. I thought they were playing away this weekend. Seafoam Stadium to play the Madison Radicals for a first place on the line matchup. It's going to be a big game.
Yeah, Jay, are you frozen? Where's that?
He might be. Jay might be frozen. Go ahead, Kane.
Okay. Everyone knows I love Madison, Minnesota games. I think having it at home gives it an extra edge for Minnesota, but it also definitely puts on more pressure. Like you said, this is for first place. This is the game that, even more so than the Colorado game, could be the outcome for the first place in the division. So, seeing that both Minnesota and Madison went away with a W against Colorado, Seafoam Stadium this Saturday is definitely going to be intense.
Yeah, I mean, I think Madison has so much to play for. Like, I think this team always has. This team again has always been good. Where I feel like they're kind of like the hot birds, cold birds. Like you never really know which Madison team you're gonna get. And as of late, we're seeing the hot birds. I don't know, whatever the hot birds version of the Radicals are. The Madicals. I don't know.
The Madicals.
The Madicals and the Badicals.
The Badicals.
That's so stupid, but we're going with that. So they're the Madicals right now. And yeah, like to be the Madison Radicals right now will be playing for a chance to get first place in the division isn't something they've been able to do in the last couple seasons. Like that's just, they haven't been in that position. So more than ever, they are going to be coming out swinging like they always do. But like, this is not one they want to drop by any means. Wind chill, I think, also, like, again, I don't want to downplay this. I feel like when I say this, it sounds like I am, but I think the wind chill feel a little less pressure. Like they've got a cushion. They can lose one and still like make the playoffs. I think if the Radicals lose one, not that they have to win out, but like they've got people hot on their tails if they lose. Wind chill have built a bit of a cushion. So not that the wind chill want to lose, not that they're not going to come out strong. Absolutely they are. This is a super important game. But like you were saying, Kane, like the Madison Radicals, this game is going to be so important for them to win, which makes it even more important for the wind chill to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, if Madison loses this weekend and for some reason the Detroit Mechanics losing streak doesn't end this weekend, the Thunderbirds and Radicals would be tied for second with 5-3. I think
and who has the head-to-head?
Radicals have the head-to-head because Pittsburgh hasn't beaten them yet.
Oh yeah.
But they would be five. They would both be 5-3, and I think the Union play this weekend as well. Against the Alley Cats. So it's possible to have 3 teams at 5-3.
Wow. Yeah,
I mean,
see what I mean?
like
And which ones make it to the playoffs?
Yeah, I put just a couple notes here in the doc. That things that we've noticed from the Radicals in the past. So keep in mind too that last time the Radicals and Winchell played was at Madison, and it was very rainy. It got big rain delay, and it's gonna be similar conditions this weekend. I guess as of this morning when I looked, I haven't looked this afternoon, but it's not gonna be like great weather on Saturday, which makes me make a very similar prediction as I did last week with the Summit. I'm gonna basically again say I think the Radicals are gonna throw a zone. I think they're gonna hit us with the sideline double trap. Like I think they do that pretty frequently. And I think their zone is pretty effective against us. I don't know about their double trap, like their sideline trap. Like, it's effective. It's really hard to get out of it, but the Winchell work on that a lot. Like they know how to get around that. But in certain conditions, if it's bad on Saturday, that could be pretty tough. Like watch for a lot of roller poles, and just like how Madison's defense comes at our offense.
Yeah, I think on top of that, the Radicals defense, at least in the first game they played against Minnesota this year, was competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, they did not let things slide. Minnesota was working for every pass and for every point. Because there are some throws where it's like, okay, well, we give you that one so we can set up our defense a little bit deeper. But the Radicals are playing like every throw is the most important throw of the game. And I think that's something that Minnesota is going to have to really be thinking about in the game, because if Minnesota is getting lazy with throws, and we've seen Minnesota get lazy with throws before, the Radicals are just going to take advantage of that. And if Radicals have a chance to beat Minnesota, especially beat Minnesota at home, they're taking, like they're going to be the hungriest team in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think this will be a game won a lot on offense, at least for the wind chill. I think I say this almost week after week of like, oh, your defense is good and we know that they're covered, but like their offense is always kind of the questionable. Like their red zone conversion needs to be better, and their hucks, are they even going to huck on Saturday? Like again, if they're facing a zone, I think they can still get a couple good hucks off, but like it's not going to be, I don't think, as efficient. It's not going to be 8 for 13 or 13 for 18 or whatever it was. Like I think that their handlers are going to have to be patient, say this week after week. I think their cutters are going to be smart. Jay, like you said, like they're going to have to go to. They're going to have to go to the disc. They can't let the disc come to them and wait for them. Like it's going to have to be a clean game on all facets. And on top of that, the defense has to still be the defense. One thing I don't have confirmation of that. I was just checking. Before we get to that, I'm just going to go to this next one up here. Is that I think a key for locking down the Radicals and stopping their game is stopping them deep. Like almost the opposite of what I was just saying, or like the same thing of what I was just saying. Like I'd be really curious who's going to be on Anthony Gutowski and Kai Marcus this game. Those two, and I'm getting ahead of myself with players to watch a little bit, but I think the Radicals do have a good deep game, very similar to the Winchell. And they've got cutters who are making crazy, stupid plays in the end zone. They've got handlers who can find people no matter where you are. Like it sounds like I'm describing the Winchell. And I think the Winchell need to kind of look at themselves like, how am I going to defend myself? And that's how I'm going to defend the Radicals. Like if they can defend deep, stop those deep looks, force Madison to throw a lot of throws like they have been this whole season, then I think that's going to be a key for the Winchell's win. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if anyone had anything to elaborate on.
No, you summed it up perfectly. You should do a podcast talking about the Winchell sometime. You'd be good at it.
Maybe I could cast for the Winchell.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have confirmation on this next note, but it is still public. I'm like refreshing my Instagram to see if Sam Berglund messaged me back, but Sam Berglund is rostered for Saturday. That is big news if he's back dressed up for the wind chill. Like, it'll be so nice to have Berglund back. Like, I think his talent has been one thing, but his personality and leadership on the field is another thing. That just, he commands the field, and there's a confidence about him. And I think there's a confidence on his line when Sam Berglund's out on the field. So to have him back in a big game like this would be like monumental.
Yeah, I've been missing his polls. If nothing else, just watching him put it up. But yeah, obviously on the field, he makes a big difference. Like I was saying earlier, with the different varieties of lines on defense that Minnesota can put out, he is a big part of what gives that Minnesota defense more depth. It allows us to have a really strong offensive look when we do get a break opportunity. So definitely look forward to him making an impact this week.
I do want to shout out just real quick. This is just a side note. Christian Johnson has kind of stepped up almost as that next primary, secondary handler on defense in Berglund's absence. And he's done a phenomenal job. Like, he hasn't been putting up like crazy numbers, but he's been very consistent, and he's been like an anchor in the backfield for the Winchell's defense. So shout out Christian Johnson. I see you. I appreciate you. Get you on the pod. And I can't wait to have Berglund back. Notable.
Key,
go ahead.
I was going to say another key player that will be there. I know you want to talk about notable absences, but Bergmeyer is also listed as active.
That's big, so getting the icebergs back together.
Icebergs will be back together this weekend. That's exactly
getting the band back together. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, we got the icebergs back, and I mean, there was a reason they were. Kane wrote that article about them last season. They are electric together. Even if it's not, 4 goals, even if they're not scoring, the pressure they can both generate, the quick movement they can get up the field, and just how well Bergmeyer can like play off of Berglund's pulls.
Yeah.
When Bert can get down to the end zone after Berglund gave him those, like, set up that pull so nicely, I mean, we get Callahan, I'm looking forward to a Callahan this weekend.
I mean, I will say, I don't know if there will be many opportunities if we're going to see a lot of roller pulls on the sideline, but depending on which way the wind's going, which way they're pulling, yeah, I think that would be nice to see, especially since the Radicals got a Callahan on us last game. So it would be nice to see that setup and that revenge. So notable absences include Brandon Mattis. I'm not sure. I did not connect with him before the game. Matt Rader. Again, I don't know where he's going to be, but he was huge against the Radicals last game. He showed up a little late to the game. He had a crazy travel schedule, and that rain delay helped him get integrated into the game, and he ended up being like basically one of the players of the game. He always is. So it's gonna be a bummer to see him gone, especially if we are talking about like deep cuts and just like having good cutters downfield, finding ways to get around the Radicals defense. Raider not being there will be tough, but they'll get through it. Quinn Snyder and Thomas Shope are also out for this weekend. So not a ton of players missing, but some notable absences that'll be a bummer to see or not see. I think a couple players to watch then. Sam Berglund, like I said, I think will be huge for the wind chill. His pulls, his handling, but again, like his presence on the field, I think he's really itching to get back out there, and he's like ready to pop off. But I'm also curious to see, like, is he still injured? Like, is he gonna integrate well? Is he gonna be too jumpy? Like it'll be interesting to see him get back onto the field. Who else? I mean, I have kind of like a list of names. Basically, it's 1 through 20 on the active roster who I think is a player to watch. Are you guys looking at anyone who like you have just like a gut feeling like is gonna pop off or is gonna be ready for a big game?
Yeah, I'm going with Mr. Recency bias, Jordan Taylor.
Heck yeah.
Player of the game last weekend. And then who I think should have been co-player of the game, Colin Berry. I think both of those guys had a really, really stellar game at home. And both players that have been on this team for, a significant amount of time now. So looking for them to anchor the team this weekend here.
I gotta say, I'm thinking Greg Cousins is gonna go kind of ham this weekend.
Okay.
This season he's been doing like really, really good, which isn't, I'm not like surprised. He's a good player. But also he's not been having like highlight level performances. And I think he has the ability to have highlight level performances. And I think he has a fire inside of him that a lot of players aspire to have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were up in the stands on Saturday and I could hear Greg Cousins chirping. Like I could hear him yelling on the field, and it wasn't like he was like mad or like upset or anything. He was just having fun. He was just, out there throwing a frisbee around, having a blast, but also like really fired up, like ready to get that win. And I think, again, playing Madison at home, he's going to have that same fire and he's going to bring it for everyone else as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool to see. I agree. I think all three of those players, like I said, 1 through 20 on the rosters is a player to watch. And I think those three, Jordan Taylor, I think has kind of been almost underappreciated. Like he's been such a steady force on this team and like he's always good. Colin Berry had one of the games of his career last weekend. And like he was like, oh, we were talking to him before the interview and he's like, yeah, I used to do that kind of stuff. And like that he was able to do it on Saturday was cool. He really enjoyed that. And then Greg Cousins, like he's fiery. He's fun to watch. And it's not like a leader on the team, but like a spark plug, maybe. Like he can spark the team. And completely agree. Real quick, just a couple players to watch for the Radicals. Like I already mentioned, Kai Marcus and Anthony Gutowski walked all over the wind chill last time we played them. Like obviously we still won, but those two are just a dangerous combination that it's really hard to defend either of them. And then defending both of them and locking that combo down is like next to impossible. So I want to see how the wind chill do that. I want to see how Kai Marcus is double teamed and like, again, how he's going to be shut down, but then who's going to be on Gutowski shutting him down. Like, he's almost like, I don't know what I was gonna say about that, but a dangerous combo. And then this was one that honestly I just picked another random name because I always want to introduce more players to the wind chill fans. Gabe Vordick, I don't know much about him, but he also is just like he seems like a pretty steady defender, cutter for the Radicals. He's been putting up some pretty good numbers for the Radicals this season. Almost kind of like Anthony Gutowski, not to the same extent, but I think he'll be another player to watch, kind of under the radar. We can't let him slide much either. That could be shift. What's up?
I know that you know next to nothing about Gabe Vordick because Correct. Gabe Vordick has 105 offensive points played and exactly 0 defensive points played.
Oh,
he is an offensive cutter.
He's offensive cutter.
He is also, I think, at least if I watch a lot of the league. If I had to pick, he is rookie of the year. He is amazing. Very, very good player. He has a plus minus of 26 with 17 goals and 6 assists, as well as 5. He is crazy. He definitely a player to watch. Definitely someone that needs to get down. He is early season favorite or mid-season favorite for rookie of the year. Gabe Vordick deserves all the love and all the appreciation he's going to get for the rest of his career.
I definitely looked up his stats earlier. I had his thing open, but then I had a million tabs open, so I just probably just closed out of him and all the other ones I had before recording. So I was like, I don't remember. He was good. I put his name down for a reason, but there you go. Thank you for reaffirming that. The wind chill need to shut down Gabe Vordick at all costs, and Anthony Gutowski and Kai Marcus.
They need to play defense and offense and score points and not turn the disc over. And this has been Windshield Talk with your professional analysis of professional frisbee.
We will see you on Saturday at Seafoam Stadium. It's gonna be a good time, as it always is. There's some giveaways happening at Seafoam, so show up early, get a free shirt. You might be able to get some boomsticks again. No promises. That's me saying this, but I heard rumors that there might have been extras. So show up really early and get some boomsticks. We're gonna be there. And again, this is like battle for first place. This game's super important. So let's show the Wind Show like our support. Let's get them fired up as well. Let's be the Greg Cousins in the stands. Spark plug that. As always, this episode is presented by the R1P1 Network. Jay and I aren't repping our Zoom backgrounds. We're having some technical difficulties on our ends right now, but look at Kane's Zoom backgrounds. Go look at our social media for all of our thumbnails and artwork there. They're all doing that. That's them. We're so grateful for their partnership. So shout out R1P1 Network. We're going to see you at Seafoam Stadium on Saturday night. In the meantime, stay chilly and ka-chow.
Stay chilly. Ka-chow.
Ciao.